But if I sincerely and authentically ask you good questions about you, that lets down the guard, and then maybe after about 5 or 10 minutes, you decide like, he's not your average, just kind of Joe who's wearing a name tag and eating bad cheese and crackers. Maybe I'll ask him a question about him.
Welcome to Your Intended Message. My guest today is Rob Thomas. Here's 3 facts that I think you should know about Rob. 1. Rob is the founder and president of Rob Thomas Global and the creator of the Rob Thomas Method, RTM. He is also author of the book, Who Do You Need to Meet? 2. Rob teaches and coaches business owners, senior executives, sales professionals, and entrepreneurs how to identify, maximize, refine, and nurture your network of contacts. And 3, Rob is an educated Eagle Scout who went to Ithaca College and worked at Walt Disney World. A well-rounded education. Rob Thomas, welcome to Your Intended Message.
George Torok, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It is an honor to be a guest on Your Intended Message today.
My pleasure talking with you, Rob, and I expect that we are going to learn some practical and valuable tips and ideas about how we can nurture and build a stronger network so that we can be more successful in our businesses and in our careers. Rob, when people come to you and you tell them that you're this networking guy, what are the most common misperceptions that you encounter?
You know, I've been using LinkedIn for 16 million years, George. And when I send a message and a connection request, people never reply to me. When I go to a networking event, I hand out gazillions amounts of my business cards, and people still never get back to me and reply to me. Or my ultimate favorite is, I keep following up with all of these people. I thought we had a great conversation at this event, and I keep sending them emails, and I never get a return. That's my best chestnut right there.
So people think they are networking, and they come to you and they tell you what they're doing, their interpretation of networking, and tell you it's not working. And what's your response?
Well, because I used to be that guy. So when I do my public talks out and about, I talk about how I wasn't always like this. I had to learn my lesson. I was that sales guy that you would see at those different grip and grins, and I would come up to you. I would push my business card into your face, and I would say, hey, so let's have a conversation about how I can sell you. Essentially, I didn't say exactly that, but close enough. I didn't ask for your card. I don't want your card. And, people wouldn't say that, but they'd be very nice. And then next thing you know, they would end up throwing out the card, and I would never keep track of them. Because, of course, I would never ask for theirs. And I would follow up, and they didn't want to talk to me. So it wasn't until I sat down at a diner with my dear friend Brian, and he and I were about ready to talk about one of the different sales gigs I had been a part of over the years. And he started off by saying, all right, Rob, so we ordered our coffee. What are you going to sell me today? I didn't have a reply to that. I didn't know what to say. And it was from that point on that my business coach at the time, we sat after that, and he said, congratulations, you've arrived. You have now figured out that it isn't always about you. And you have to flip that conversation and make it more about the other person than about you. And that's where I don't tell that whole story. That's where I try to take people that meet me, my talks, or my clients with that. And I developed the title, Who Do You Need to Meet? because that really is and works well with this today. That is really my or your intended message because it's specific. It doesn't talk about anybody, everybody, and somebody. It doesn't talk about the three people we don't know. It talks about being specific.
Meaning, when we sit down at the start of the day and we think, well, I'm going to develop my network today, we need names or we need a description of an avatar? How do we start?
I started with my LinkedIn profile and all my professional contacts. And what I needed to do is I needed to identify which ones I was going to reach out to first. Well, so I had to develop a method or a pecking order to identify those different individuals with. So a 4-step type of identification process, very simplistic because I'm stupid. So I needed something just as clean and simple so I would understand. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to tell somebody else about it. So a 1 in your network are new contacts that you've just met, you've just identified with, you've met at some conference or some kind of coffee clutch, but there's something about them that really intrigues you. You're interested in knowing more. A 2 in your network really starts to talk about an old colleague or contact at a former company, or perhaps an alumni. And an alumni is not just a college or a high school. It actually goes back to junior high and elementary. Not recently, but during the pandemic, I was contacted by someone who I met in elementary school, and she works for Deloitte. We had a great conversation and catch up. A 3 in your network really talks about a one-way kind of conversation. We've got those contacts that are out there where you really do more for them than they do for you, and vice versa. Kind of you know who they are in your network. The ultimate objective in identifying your contacts is getting them to a level 4, which is a mutually beneficial type of relationship. Be either personal or professional, you do just as much for them as they do for you. And that's where the prioritization of identifying a network, at least it had to start that way for me, is what I teach people to do so that they can figure out the massive bucket of humans they've amassed across their career.
And this pecking order are these steps or are they labels?
Well, we're going to call them really labels. So if you were going to have the different individuals and LinkedIn were to have that space, it doesn't have it anymore, or you've got a database, you're going to put a numbering, a numbering perspective with it. Could you do A, B, C, and D? Absolutely. I just think 1 through 4 was easier for me. Again, it was just simpler for me.
And so once you've segmented your connections and what do you do next?
You determine which ones that you really want to go and reinitiate or initiate a meeting with. So it really kind of depends on the day and your mood. More often than not, I tell my clients to start with the 4s because there probably aren't a lot of them. And if you start with those 4s mutually beneficial and book a meeting, be it either virtually or in person, you get a meeting with them because you know that it's a mutually beneficial relationship. So it's not going to be a struggle really kind of getting a conversation or having a meeting with them. The other ones might be a little more difficult. And the 3s to get to 4s may never get promoted. And so that's where the refining of the network comes in for folks, for me, because I teach people to swipe them out. Send them over to another social media arm, but they don't need to be in LinkedIn. They're not a professional contact. I kind of do this a little bit with family and friends, because if you have not had that discussion about business and how you make money with them, why are you having them still remain in your professional network just because they know a lot of people? No, it doesn't work. So that's where the pecking order, or I would call it prioritization, really comes in.
Is money the most important measure?
Yeah, that's a great question. We all are out here to try to make a living, and I would look at it a little bit more about supporting ourselves and or our families. Does that translate to money? Yeah, it does. Agreements and contracts and those types of things. But either in the beginning or depending on that relationship, it may not be. I teach people in their network to be the heroes of their network, to really make introductions, not always quick hit connections to money. Well, I reached out to that person and I appreciate that introduction, but I really don't think there's going to be any business that transacts there. Okay, that's okay. But they may call upon you later. Almost sounds a little Godfatherish. They may call upon you later for a favor, or maybe a great electrician or a plumber in the area. That behooves you. That also it makes you a hero in your network. And I think that's important. I talk about both personal and professional, but more professional than anything.
So I'm hearing that money may be involved at some point in a transaction, but that's not necessarily what is needed to keep the connection alive.
Correct. Because what we have to do is we have to get to more of the mindset of asking them about them. Maybe there isn't any there, as I call it, in terms of business. But we have to find that out, and we need to ask good, pertinent questions. If we ask too many open-ended, wild questions, well, we could get, a conversation that might go on for an hour where you don't get a word in edgewise. But I also have a tell for that too. So this is really about finding out about them to see if there are any synergies. And I think the questioning process or method, part of my method that I use for that, facilitates being more efficient.
Let's assume I'm a banker and we're meeting at an event, and I start to you with, well, where do you do your banking, Rob? And how happy are you with your current banker?
And you
want to know about the incentive we have for opening an account in our bank.
And you're coming right at me. And you know what? I'm not right. And I'm not going to blame you for that. I can't tell you how many different times that has occurred. I will answer their question out of courtesy, but I will also then flip it. So they might come at me and I'll say, I bank at Chase Bank. That's fantastic. And I've been there because that's where my mortgage got sold. Am I ever looking for another bank? Absolutely, all the time. Let me ask you a question, George, now that you've asked me a couple here. Where's home for you?
Home is Toronto.
Right. But in that conversation, I'm going to get to the beginning of the acronym I teach my clients, which is called FORM. And so F stands for family, or I start off the questioning with, so where's home for you? Oh, Toronto. Oh, that's fantastic. That's great. Since we're standing here in a meeting in Montreal, that's kind of interesting. So how long was really the commute to do that? I might do an extended question off of that. Now, I know that you're a banker, and you asked me a great question about that. How long have you been doing that, though?
Ah, okay. I see how you turned the conversation.
So what I'm now going to is a form, which is occupation. I can see it on your name badge already. You just came at me and hit me with it. I get that. But I will, to more often than not, get through the whole acronym. Some may not, because they're going to get hung up on the next letter, which is R, which stands for recreation. So as we're talking about banking, and this is fantastic, you've been doing it for about 5 or 10 years, and obviously you must really enjoy it. But George, what is it that you do outside of all the banking? What do you do for fun? Now, more often than not, people will always downshift to their family and their dogs and their pets. Totally get it. That's not what I'm looking for. So my follow-up question to that will be, yeah, no, that's fantastic. And I love how you've got 17 dogs and 14 cats and you love to farm on the side, but tell me more about the farming. Are you just farming kind of for pumpkins and pickles, or are you? And that's where I start to get into their head a little bit. Because when's the last time you were at an in-person event or even a virtual meeting and another person asked you about what you like to do for fun when you're not doing all this banking? What? What are you talking about? What do you like to do for fun? Do you like to golf? Do you like to swim? Do you like macrame? Do you like chess? Nobody's ever asked me that. Well, now I'm going to top that if they keep going. So now, hopefully, I have lowered the screen of this sales facade that they've hit me with. They're like, this guy isn't trying to sell me. What's happening? They lower it down. And I say, so when you come to an event like this, George, I mean, we've paid $85 for this rubber chicken. Who is it you need to meet here? And they're going to be absolutely bamboozled or astonished or completely gobsmacked about, what did he just ask me? He just asked me about what? Who I need to meet. Who asked that? And we're probably going to hear the three people I mentioned before that we don't know, which is anybody, everybody, and somebody who wants to buy my stuff or bank at my bank. And then that's where the rubber's going to meet the road, because I'm going to ask, well, so I don't know those three people. Is there a specific person you need to meet? And be like, who is this guy? Like, who is this guy? What's happening here? That's where my whole method in questioning really goes to the heart of the matter of, do I want to keep this person as a contact?
And Rob, I can see in that conversation how you completely disarm the initial attack, mm-hmm. and you don't give them a judo throw and throw them down. No, you calm them and you lead them into a conversation that they feel comfortable in, and they've now revealed more about themselves. So you've gotten to know them, and they got to be thinking, I think I like this guy.
When I get into my talks, I talk about we cannot make other people like us. We can't make other people buy from us. We can't make ourselves sell to that other. We cannot push a rope in this conversation. What I needed to learn was that, and let's ask questions about them first, because you know what? Maybe after a couple of these letters of my acronym, I don't really want them in my network. And I'm doing that decision-making process in my head as we talk. The ultimate objective of all of this questioning, you may ask, is one thing that I coined the organic switch. Because we cannot make, George, I cannot make you like me. I cannot make you buy from me. But if I sincerely and authentically ask you good questions about you that lets down the guard, and then maybe after about 5 or 10 minutes, you decide like, this guy's intriguing. He's really kind of interesting. He's not your average, just kind of Joe who's wearing a name tag and eating bad cheese and crackers. Maybe I'll ask him a question about him. And that is what I term the organic switch. And it's organic because organically we have now decided to ask good questions of the other person. We want to know more about them. Now, does it happen every time? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. That's the bad news. How many people have been in conversations that go on and on and on and on? But we need to figure that out. Sales managers ad infinitum in my 20 plus career of sales have always said, oh yeah, go out and network and, use your cards and go to the grip and grins and see what, and you're going to waste your time. It's just going to be a waste of complete time and good luck. You'll never make a sale. Well, I differ. I differ with that opinion, because now I would rather have an ironclad network that knows me well and I know them versus just this sales kind of blah, blah.
When you decide to attend a networking event, do you pick an event with a group of people who you see as potential clients, or do you pick an event for who you think might be interesting people?
It's a great question. I'm going to go for could be potential clients, because if we're going to drop good money, especially in this day and age after the pandemic, if we're going to drop our good money to go and attend an event, we want to make it worth it. It's pretty straightforward. If I drop $85 on a rubber chicken or bad fish, that's kind of a push, unless I've just got $85 to throw around. So most of us don't. So most are going to go to an event to try to figure out whether there might be a prospect or client there. What I thought you were going to ask me is, what's my plan before and then when I first arrive at the event that most people won't do? That's where I thought you were going to ask me.
And now I will beg you to please answer that question. You've teased us.
So the intended message about all of this really is creating a network, is creating relationships, and creating a portfolio of contacts that can know you and trust you. When we go to an event, more often than not, we may know a couple of people there. However, let's take a simple Chamber of Commerce event. If we are a member of said chamber, we may know the president and CEO of the chamber, but we have not seen them or shaken their hand probably recently. So you've already got one individual already that you need to go and meet with when you go to that event. Now, before going to the event, let's say it's the Greater Toronto Chamber of Commerce. And give me the name of a large bank in your area.
Royal Bank.
Excellent. So the Royal Bank of Canada, or just
Royal Bank of Canada? Yeah.
Okay, terrific. So let's say at this Chamber of Commerce event for the Toronto Chamber, the Royal Bank of Canada is the presenting sponsor of said event. And you may or may not know a contact from there, but probably don't know the contact they're going to have at that event. So the strategy is fairly straightforward. Always go early and stay late. Early is about a 15, 20-minute run. You're going to go there. You'll obviously check in. You'll put your name badge on your right lapel, not your left. And so the tip on that is 95% of us are right-handed. The other 5% are left-handed, but they shake with their right hand because they know they're in the minority. We go and we have that name badge, and then we ask for the president and CEO of the Toronto Chamber. I was wondering if, Gil Brooks was here, and I could just go up and say hi, introduce myself, say hi. And you may or may not know Gil, which is fine. You go to Gil and you say, hey, this is fantastic. I'm George Torok, and I'm a great member of this chamber. So glad that you're having this event this morning. I just want to say thank you for having it. They'll be like, wow, that's fantastic. That's great. And then you ask Gil, you say, I noticed that the Royal Bank of Canada is the presenting sponsor this morning. Yep, that's correct. Do you happen to see your contact for the Royal Bank of Canada here, maybe an eyesight? I would like to introduce myself to them. Now, if they're shrewd or they're clever, Your president CEO is going to ask why, because that Royal Bank of Canada probably dropped $5, $10, $15,000 on an event. They want to be a little cautious about who they say hi to. They may not. Because I'm a member of the Greater Toronto Chamber of Commerce, and they're a presenting sponsor, and I'm very curious about their bank and knowing more, perhaps even becoming a client. So now you have instantly pivoted, and that president CEO is now going to introduce you to that Royal Bank of Canada contact. So in the first 15 minutes, you have now either reestablished or made a new contact in 15 minutes. Now, as your networking coach, I'm going to give you this advice, and then I'm going to tell you that you can go home. What? You can go home. You've made 2 contacts that you really didn't kind of know that well. So I'm giving you permission. It's about $85 worth. So you can go home. Well, wait a minute. Time out. Why would I want to go home? Why would I go home? Well, I don't want to force you into kind of, meeting all the rest of the different sponsors and stuff. And I'm playing with you, but I'm playing with your ego a little bit, because most people are scared out of their mind to go to the event and do those 2 actions. If I give you 3 or 4 actions now, you are most certainly overwhelmed. But no, I don't want to leave. So what do I do after the second person? They start to get excited. I say, do it again. What? Just go do it again with another presenting sponsor. I want you to meet all the presenting sponsors if you got it in you. Really? Yeah. It'll never happen because the event will start. But that's the whole staying late part. So then you follow up with all those different people. And if they were on the dais and doing their typical speeches about their company, you're now going to know exactly who they are. So you don't need the president and CEO at the end of the meeting.
And it's probably fair to guess that if they are sponsoring the event, they're doing it because they want to make contacts.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's very rare, I've heard, a president CEO, if a George Torok asks that question of that president, that they're going to say, well, so why do you want to meet him? Very rare that's going to occur. They want to throw as many humans at that contact as possible so that they're like, oh, it's fantastic. I have people coming up to me all over the place. And little did they know that Rob Thomas, the networking coach in the background, is the one who is in charge of really kind of pulling the strings if they want to behave.
The card exchange, let's assume that that's going to continue as a practice. When is it appropriate to ask for or give your card?
So, excellent question. From here, this moment forward, the audience for your intended message and George Torok are going to hear one thing from Rob Thomas. Never, ever, ever from this point forward are anyone to just give out their business card unless they are asked for it. Ever. That starts now. So the goal is to always ask for a business card first before giving one. So we talked a little bit about the pecking order and or the instant kind of conversation. And the organic switch has occurred in that processing of the FORM acronym. They have started asking us questions because you know what? They actually may like us. When the organic switch occurs, that's my permission to you to get ready to think about asking for their business card. Because you know what? We have established the integrity, the authenticity, the willingness for them to really be a partner in our network. Though they don't really know that like that, that's what they've done organically. So we want to ask them for their business card first. Now, here's the ironic PS to that whole exercise. Watch to see if they really ask you for yours. Most people think that exercise with business cards is always reciprocal. It's not. And you shall be fascinated. You will be fascinated at the irony of how it is not reciprocal. And those people may not ask you for yours, which is fascinating to watch. But you can't, I can tell that until I'm blue in the face, but you will not understand that until you're in that exercise. You'll be like, oh my God, he's right. You asked for the card. They didn't ask for yours. And you don't offer, you say, oh, would you like my card? You don't do that. That's gone. Because they don't want it. They didn't ask for it. And guess what? They didn't want it. So that kind of means, though they might have switched on you, they sort of like you. Because people buy from people they know and they trust and they like. But we can't make them like us. So what's the activity we're going to do to figure out whether or not that's true?
What is that activity? And is that a sign if someone doesn't ask for your card? Is that a signal to get lost?
It's a tell. It's not, it's a sign or a tell. Yeah. But the activity of asking for a card first before you give one, this is the activity I'm talking about. And so if they don't ask you for your card after you've asked for theirs, that could be a tell that, you know what, they really didn't kind of want to talk to you. They don't really see a there there. They're more in the cold calling mindset, the slam bam, you know, they're really more in that kind of world and region. And you know what, that's fine for them because we can't control them. We can only control us and what we're doing with them. But that is a tell. It is a tell. Now, what I've seen as of recently, I gave a talk up in Boston last week. It was fantastic. When I asked for a card of a person that I really thought there was some kind of there, they didn't have one. And it wasn't because, you know, it's post-pandemic. Hey, scan my phone. Hey, I've got some technical blah, blah, blah. No. They really actually didn't bring a business card to a networking event. Now that in and of itself, I can't explain, but I will tell you, don't go. If you don't have a business card with at least your name, email, or phone number on it, doesn't have to have an address or a funky logo, or even a QR code like the back of mine does now, don't go. Don't go. Now, can you get past that and through that? Sure. You could ask for one of theirs and write your name on the back. That's more work that you just don't go.
Rob, if people would be interested in learning more about your work and your services, where's the best place to find you?
Always at www.robthomasglobal.com. I recently actually just changed the name from USA because I got international clients, so I'm global. And I thought it was shorter and easier to spell than international. So robthomasglobal.com.
Rob, and you can find the link in the description below. Rob, as we prepare to wrap up, if you could sit down with a rising star in an organization and give them 1, 2, or 3 pieces of advice of how they can build their network, both outside the company but also within the organization, what might be that 1, 2, or 3 pieces of advice?
So for either internal or external, they need to identify their network on who they need to meet. So they have to make that decision internally who they really need to meet up the flagpole or cross department. And then outside the organization, they've got a whole host of kind of figuring out what they need to do. The second component is going to be to meet those different individuals, be it either virtually or in person, and then ask them good questions about them to find out if there's any there. If there isn't, then really not kind of pursue that contact at all. So number one is identifying who they need to meet. Number two is going to be maximizing it and meeting with them, be it either virtually or in person. And then third is really going to be kind of refining, and you could put nurturing with that, depending on whether or not that's a contact that you really want to keep or not. Social media has allowed us to be able to just follow individuals versus an actual connect like on LinkedIn. And that's okay. We can have tons of followers and we can follow other people because we just didn't see a match there in terms of networking.
Valuable advice. My guest today is Rob Thomas, reminding you that when you start your networking, remember that it's not all about you. If you like what you heard, remember to like, comment, and share this podcast. Come back every week for more practical insights to help you convey your intended message. I'm your host, George Torok.